second part is the board authorizes HART and the executive director in cooperation with the city to proceed with a public-private partnership to design, build, and finance the remainder of the city center, the city center guideway and stations and the Pearl Highlands garage, and to operate and maintain the entire system. Third part, with respect to the the first part applies to phase one, so I'm going to read it again. Board authorizes HART and the executive director in cooperation with the city to proceed with phase one of the public-private partnership to design, build, and finance the city center guideway and stations in the Pearl Highlands garage, and to operate and maintain the third part, with respect to the subsequent phases in the public-private partnership procurement process, the board directs HART to provide periodic updates to the board, and that the monitoring and oversight of the public-private partnership procurement process in conjunction with the city and County of Honolulu be subject to the oversight policies and implementing rules and regulations that the board may adopt under RCH 17-704.1J.
Can I second that?
Can you repeat what she just said?
No, I can't.
In a motion and second, is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to request a modification to the second part of the motion, insofar as I do not think we should limit the approval of the P3 approach to phase one only. I think we've provided some safeguards to have board oversight in the process, and so I don't think limiting it to phase one.
I'm prepared to accept that as a friendly amendment. The only comment that I have about that is we've learned a lot about the procurement process, and theoretically, the procurement process has a life of its own under the state laws, and so our ability to intervene and direct various things within the process is really advisory only and not really subject to the board action. So that's my comment. But as I said, I'm prepared to accept that as a friendly amendment, so that I would eliminate phase one from the second part of the motion.
Unfortunately, I'm not prepared to agree. I think it's extraordinarily important that we have one more opportunity because there's so many outstanding questions, at least from the city, that need to be addressed. And once this process gets rolling, even with the new board rules, I'm clear as to whether or not we can provide the proper oversight as required by the new charter. So I'll withdraw my second, maybe somebody else can second the motion as revised if in fact the maker of the motion is in agreement with the chair.
For sake of clarity, would you read the second part again as amended?
Okay. The second part, I'm trying to remember my Robert's Rules of Order here. Okay, the second part reads, if the friendly amendment is accepted, the board authorizes HART and the executive director to cooperate with the city to proceed with a public-private partnership to design, build, and finance the city center guideway and stations and the Pearl Highlands garage, and to operate and maintain the entire system.
I second that. I second it.
Could we have a little bit further more discussion? Wes, to your concern, which I certainly share, because this is a joint procurement, HART by itself cannot accept a procurement that the city does not fully support. So with that understanding, would that address some of your concerns?
You're correct. We do have other ways in which we can, the city can interject ourselves in the procurement process. So I'm speaking more as a board member though than a city representative. I still would hold my concern about the ability of the board to respond to its duties and obligations as a policy-making body. This is a huge procurement. It does represent a policy matter, but I'm prepared to simply voice my concerns and let others speak to the change in the motion.
And just to be clear, the reason why I'm concerned with limiting our policy approval of the P3 approach is because in order for this P3 to have maximum chances of success, we need to have a sufficient number of qualified bidders. And the concern is that if we limit our approval to just phase one, it would deter bidders from submitting their, even attempting to bid on this project. Keep in mind, phase one is just getting a list of qualified bidders. It's not the actual bid. And you know, if Andy wants to elaborate on that concern, I'm happy to hear.
I just think that we should keep in mind that the Center City section has already gone through a DP recruitment process, and we ended up canceling that. I think when developers, contractors, operators bid on these things, they realize the process can be canceled at any time for any reason. And so whether or not we have that stipulation in our motion, I don't think is going to make a difference to those who respond, and whether they respond. So.
Andy, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I share your comments, Board Member Lee. I think there's a competitive, we're competing with other regions for projects, so I want to maximize our chance to get the maximum number of competitors to our isolated island here. I think the other thing to be mindful of is that, as was discussed earlier, the FTA has requested us to make a decision on City Center within 30 days, which we're poised to do now. But I don't think this is the time to indicate to them that this is just a phase one decision. We really need to make a decision about what we're doing with City Center and Pearl Island. Just one other technical comment to the motion. When referring to Pearl Highlands, perhaps you want to say Pearl Highlands Transit Center and Garage. Thank you.
I'll accept that.
He's the second.
I second as amended.
Any more discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I fully support the amended motion, and to piggyback on what Mr. Roberts just said, from reading the letter from FDA, it does say decisive action must be taken. And further to that, I think it plays into our next requirement, is getting back to them with our financial plan, so that we have a clear path what we're basing the financial plan on.
Any more discussions? If not, all those in favor of the amended version of what Member Shin said, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. We're going to skip to item number 8, Resolution 2018-11 regarding the position of the Board of Directors on the Honolulu Authority of Rapid Transportation on Honolulu City Council Bill 62, 2018, relating to change order. I think we don't have any in the packet. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, or testimony before we take any vote? If not,
You want me to speak?
yes.
Yes. Sorry. I have concerns about this resolution, and am not going to be voting in favor of it, primarily for one reason. and that is this addresses communications with the city on change orders of $250,000 or more on a monthly basis, I think. And I think it is not in HART's interest to micromanage the administration in this area. The board's own past practices, and if it accepts the new rules, will be to review change orders in excess of $1 million. We do not look at change orders below that in terms of board action, simply because it's an amount that is relatively modest in connection with the entire project as a whole. And it would create a burden, I think, on administrative staff to have to prepare all the information and paperwork in the package. You should see it. I mean, if you've looked at all the change orders in the backup, it's quite voluminous. And I think it would be too much of a burden to do that, and I would hope that the city council would understand that. Having said that, my objection to the motion, to the resolution, does not mean that the periodic reports that HART provides to the mayor and the city council on change orders at the $250,000 level can continue. I don't have any objection to that. I just have an objection to creating more of an administrative burden. And if we can find another way to meet the council's concerns, I'm happy to look at it.
Anybody else? So on the table is the adoption of resolution 2018-11. Can I get a motion for adoption? Seeing no motion, the resolution is there. Okay, I'm going back to item number 7, change orders, which I believe is a voting item. Frank?
Morning, Board.
Frank, can you, because of, again, our quorum, which is really tough, would you be able to keep this under 2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not going to show the slide yet. So this change order is to affect an additional supplemental instruction for the Kuala or East Canada Station for a conduit that is a necessary part of the work to be done by the fixed facility or the station contractor to turn over to the systems contractor. And it has to do with some changes the EOR made to the installation of access hatches in the box curve, which caused us to have to reroute the conduit from the TCCR and ruin the traction for the track communications and control. The EOR also provided design clarifications for missing, unclear, or incorrect design details for electrical conduits. And so we've notified the engineer of record, who we believe he's got some liability with respect to this error, as we see. So they've been put on formal notification. But in the meantime, I need approval of this change order for $1.5 million to proceed with procurement of material. Right now, it's impacting the progress on that project, and we face discussions with the station contractor with respect to compensable delays if we can't resolve this. So I'm seeking your approval to do so. And I apologize for the brevity.
Okay, so there's 2 of them. So this is the first one, which is on A, Westawak Station. And the approval you're seeking for is 1.5 million, is that correct?
That's correct. The changes, the value of the change is within our allocated contingency for this specific contract, so I'm not looking for additional funds. It is. I can handle it within this contract.
So you're not asking for additional funds?
No, I'm just asking for approval of the change order. Because it's over.
Any other questions? not, motion to accept.
So moved.
Second?
Okay.
Oh, sorry. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Sounds better.
Thank you very much.
Okay, B, do you have B on the additional compensation?
Bob Wiggs will
Okay.
address that.
Thank you. Okay, I'll make this one very quick as well. This change order is only for $17,500 approximately. The reason we brought it to the board is it's a portion of a previous change order, and this was to add overhead and profit to this. So it brought it up to $1,000,008. So we wanted to make sure that the board knew it. We don't need any additional money. So it is for the air conditioning units that were moved from the station contractors to the Ansaldo contract. They're a high efficiency air conditioning unit, and we needed to pass it through them as a result of the Buy America. So that's really the change order amount.
I don't understand why we are making a decision to increase the markup when we made a decision earlier to have it at 6% and now it's going to be 2% higher.
Right, the 2% higher, we did not negotiate on any of that with Ansaldo prior. We just gave them that as a directive. They were not willing to accept the 6%. They had the ability to actually get 10%. We negotiated down from the 10% to 8%, which was a 2% increase in that value.
How do they have the ability to get 10%?
That's by contract. They have the ability.
Our contract with them calls
Yes.
for 10%?
Yes.
Am I the only one confused over this? We have a contract with 10%. Somehow we awarded another thing at 6%. We said we're not negotiating.
And when they would not accept that, we mutually agreed to an 8%. Yes.
Oh, the 10% was in a contract that predated
Yes.
HART.
Yes.
I see. So it was a bad deal then. We tried to fix in subsequent agreements,
Yes.
and we were unsuccessful to date because of the bad deal then. Is that essence? Yeah. That sucks.
For the Nicole Chapman, the executive director. To that question, there's a HART provision that where there is force account that you put 20% overhead and profit for the contractors, and then for the subcontractors, 10% in the second and third tier. But FTA has said, hey, we cannot do a percentage, we cannot do cost plus percentage of cost. So what we said was, okay, overhead is overhead, but for the profit, we can do calculations. So we do this calculations based on how much risk they have for this particular change. And so when we did a unilateral, I said, you know what, we think it was a 6%. And then when, and it was as a unilateral, after we did the calculations, so we didn't comply with FTA. And then they said, you know, we're gonna file we got a claim against this. And so then we did scope clarification on the type of what the risks and what it took on this particular change. And we said, you know what, it's justified at 8%. That's how we came to 8%.
So if we went force account, it would have been 10. This was a negotiating strategy, so we're going to 8. Right?
Yeah.
And also, then I just have to emphasize the FTA requirement, that we cannot just go blanket at 10%.
But that's if you negotiate. But if you went force account, state law says 10. Period. If we went force account.
If it was force account, yes.
Yes, so we negotiated. So at least we came down to 8.
Yeah.
That's it.
But if the FDA says we can't do that, how are we paying 10 under the other agreement?
You can pay it under force account if you decided to go force account. But if you're negotiating, that's what the FDA is saying. Don't just give them the 10. You're negotiating.
Isn't everything we do negotiation?
That's the trouble.
Well, for instance, where the overhead is not negotiated. That's their audit.
I move for approval.
Second.
Yeah, move second, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Member Fujii, for sticking around, appreciate it. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Now I'd like to go back in order. Item number 5, Federal Transit Administration letter received February 21st. Andy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as you know, we received a letter from the FDA last Friday. And then we had the opportunity, Robert Yu, our CFO, and I traveled to Nashville as part of the American Public Transportation Association annual meeting. And at that meeting, we conducted a meeting with the FDA on Monday, this past Monday. And at the meeting were the acting administrator for the FDA, the executive director for the FDA, the head of their program management branch, the acting director for the Region 9, and a couple of other individuals. So we had the top leadership of the FDA at the meeting. And just as a quick summary of how the meeting transpired, the acting administrator pretty much was apologetic for the tone of the letter because she had already seen the initial media reports that had come out once the letter was released on Friday. And she indicated that really what their intent was to convey their concern primarily about the schedule of and that resolution of issues. So they were trying to get our attention for sure, but it wasn't really meant to be threatening. So that was interesting to hear that right at the beginning of the meeting. And it became pretty apparent to me that although we meet monthly with the PMOC and quite often the FDA representatives attend our monthly meetings here in Honolulu, and we do keep in touch with the FDA in Washington and in San Francisco, it became apparent to me that they were not completely familiar with all the progress that we've been making on the project over the last several months, and they were not completely aware of all the activities, specifically on our city center procurement P3 deliberation. So that gave me a great opportunity to go through all of that, which I did. I updated them on both the construction activities on the project, our strategy on completing the project. I talked about activating the yard, working very closely with Ansaldo to step up activities on the core systems. Talked about our strategy going through the airport, and then, of course, talked about our approach to the city center and Pearl Highlands. So that exchange was very beneficial, and they were very interested and appreciative of that update. I emphasized to them that our budget and schedule have remained unchanged since January of 2017, because you know in the letter they referred back to 2015 about cost overruns, which of course was true, that I indicated that a lot changed, especially taking into account the special session in summer of 2017 with all the additional funding that was provided by our elected officials under Act 1. And then all the progress that we've been making. So they acknowledge all of that as well. I did indicate that the P3 deliberations did take much longer than we anticipated. However, I expressed to them that I felt it was very beneficial that having gone through the additional activities of the Ernst & Young study, the white paper that we presented to you, and the questions and answers with the city and all the consultations with various city departments. I expressed to them that I felt that was all very beneficial, and I think this was expressed earlier in this meeting, bringing forward a lot of the due diligence, making sure that we don't issue incomplete designs and information. So they acknowledge that as well. We did discuss, of course, the three requests, and I used the word from the letter, 30 days to make the decision on City Center, Pearl Highlands. I indicated that we should have the decision within 3 days of Monday, and you have now made that decision, so I'm sure they're going to be very pleased with that direction. We also talked about the 60-day time frame that they indicated to us for updating the financial plan and recovery plan. That was already in line with our expectation within HART, so I indicated to them that we believe we could meet that 60-day window as well. And then we also discussed the issue of the $44 million. And in the letter, I sort of brought that up in the context of the budget, and I clarified that $44 million is a source of funds issue and wasn't really even needed by HART for our performance because it was derived out of the financial plan submitted back in September of 2017, which indicated $44 million worth of funds required for fiscal year 18 and 19. We're already past 18, we didn't need the money. 19, we don't need the money. But the fact is that the FDA sees that as a show of commitment by the city. And so we discussed that as well. And we do indeed want us within 60 days, us meaning Honolulu, to act on committing those funds within 60 days. And I had spoken to Council Chair Martin before the meeting, and he asked me to convey his word to the FDA that he would take the appropriate steps to organize council meetings and special meetings as necessary to be able for the council to deliberate and act on the $44 million issue within that 60-day window. So the FDA was pleased with that as well. We talked a bit about the risk refresh, and they did note that there had been tremendous improvement compared to the risk refresh done in 2016. As I explained previously, FDA or PMOC more specifically performs a risk refresh every 2 years. They use a top-down methodology, whereas we use a bottoms-up methodology. And 2 years ago, there was about $1 billion or so difference in the two views of what this project would cost, and now we're within 1.6% of each other. And they view that as a significant improvement. Nonetheless, 1.6% is $134 million. That's real money. And they want us to reflect that in our updated financial plan. And they see that as a worst case because they understand that our view is that we don't believe we're going to need that money. We're going to treat that as a project contingency because otherwise we wouldn't know where to account for it. They were fine with that. But they indicated as a worst case, the way they would like us to update the financial plan is to account for the $134 million as well as to account for it in our budget. And they want us to consider the project budget for the purposes of the FDA to include the $134 million. So in other words, $8.299 billion. In terms of this updated financial plan, even though we will continue to perform with our existing budget of $8.165 billion. That makes sense to you. So for FDA purposes, we're going to update the financial plan as a worst case based on the risk refresh.
And before you move on from that, so with this additional funding that we have to show in the recovery plan, where are you going to put that amount in contingency, or how are you going to account for that?
Yeah, I believe we'll have to show it as a project contingency, because there would be no other
Right.
place to put it, because we don't recognize that as a project cost.
And so then as part of the recovery plan, does that mean the city has to demonstrate a willingness to fund that?
Well, again, we're gonna look at all of our funding sources. We're gonna work closely with the city, of course, over the next 60 days. But we'll be looking at DET, the way that DET's performing, as well as DAT. The federal grant, of course, is rather fixed. Nobody's anticipating asking for more there. But we'll look at the performance of DET, DAT, and see how that comes out and what the implication is on the need for city sources of funds.
And so in our P3 specifications, are we gonna stick with our original budget in terms of our?
Yes, I mean, this is all for the FDA.
Right.
As reflected in our monthly reports, we're still at 8.165 billion, and that is unchanged. So just to wrap up the meeting, they wrapped it up by saying, as long as we follow through, we will be in a much better place on this project. So, certainly we have to follow through on the actions that are due. So, thank you. Take any questions if you have.
The issue of the risk refresh and the desire of the FTA for us to revise our recovery plan as well as the financial plan in the recovery plan to include the change in the total cost of the project, $134 million more, and a revised revenue service date that takes it out, 9 months or so, is something I think should be a policy decision by the board. And should the board adopt the proposed permitted interaction group's recommendation on oversight and its rules, would certainly come within the purview of a board decision. I'm very concerned. I understand what the FTA wants. I had this conversation with Andy as well. So it's not a surprise. And I'm concerned that I hear what the FTA wants. I've read most of the risk refresh report, and quite frankly, I don't understand how they got to the extra. I mean, the math doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't know how they got to the extra 134 million, but I do know that before we add 134 million to the financial plan, I want a discussion of where that money is going to come from and where it's going to be spent. It's not enough. I'm not satisfied with just putting in an unallocated contingency, and whether or not there are secondary mitigation measures that we can consider to keep the project within the $8.165 billion and within the revenue service date. Because by putting it in the recovery plan and the financial plan, I don't believe that I would support that if it meant that we're making those changes to our schedule and our financial plan. I mean, our budget for the whole project.
Maybe I do need to add one thing. The rationale of the FDA is, and where this is leading is, once we submit the revised recovery plan and they approve it, the next step would be to revise the full funding grant agreement, because they've referenced the budget and schedule in the full funding grant agreement. So the view of the FDA, and this was expressed in the meeting, is that they would prefer to go with this worst case so that we only have to revise the FFGA once. And we wouldn't have to go back again if the project, for some reason, exceeded its budget or the schedule changed. So just I want to convey that to you as well, that that's their rationale. Now, I also support what I think Board Member Shin is saying, is that we should continue to have our own financial plan, because I've made the commitment that we're operating to the $8.165 billion December 2025 schedule.
And I'm sorry, and with respect to the full funding grant, if the board accepts the recommendations of the permitted interaction group, we have a policy, because we are charged under the charter amendment to come up with a policy for approving agreements with the federal government. And so the policy that we have proposed requires the board to approve any changes to the full funding grant agreement.
Any other discussions, questions?
Yes, just to go back to the mayor's concern about this particular letter and what it means. If you read what's being stated here with regard to the 44 million, it's critical of the steps to fully commit the 44 million have been taken. And I think those steps might include more than just the city council action. And I just want everybody here to know that if it means what the mayor was saying, that it's got to be cash in hand, that can't occur even with the favorable action of the city council until January next year. And so hopefully we can work that out, because it's kind of vague here as to what those steps imply and what does fully committed mean, and hopefully that can be kind of negotiated. But I want the board to understand it's a serious problem here.
Any other questions? Okay, not moving on. Item number 9, dissolution of the permitted interaction group to appoint the board of directors 9th voting member and formation of a new permitted action group to appoint the board of directors 9th voting member. Let's see, from the existing PIC group is we're gonna remove Toby off of that, and I will take his place. Two members. So Wes, Imani, Jackie, Wes, I said Wes. Oh, Wes. Troy, Terry Lee is on, I'm sorry, is on the board. So again, Terry Lee, Hoyt, Wes, the two Wes's, Imani, Kathy, and myself. We appointed to the big group that will be looking at the 9th voting member. Item number 11, HART annual report. Andy?
The annual report is required by charter, and we need your approval to submit it to the mayor and the city council.
So, members, take a look at it and you can comment the next time. The reason for that is you cannot vote on this to be moved on to the next meeting. We've lost quorum on the vote. Okay, but if you guys have any questions, please direct it to Andy.
Andy, just one quick question. Is there a deadline by which we need to submit it?
Hi, good morning, Chair. Robert Lee, Chief Financial Officer. From what I understand, it's actually 30 days after the year.
After we reported it, after we reviewed it?
The deadline is, from what I understand, the annual report is 30 days after the fiscal year end.
No rush for the end.
Let's take another 6 months then.
Well, Well, the question is not whether we're on time or we're late. One of the areas that we need to capture information is on subcontractor information. And we don't keep information on subcontractors, our general contractors. So what we do is, the end of May and the beginning of June, we would send emails out to them with a spreadsheet for them to fill in this information for the subcontractors. Now, you know, the thing is, you know, most of the information for the annual report, we do it within 30 days. But with the subcontractor information that we have to rely on the general contractors to submit, that's really the whole up, at least for last year and for this year.
One suggestion, going forward for next year, if this is a problem, is to submit, you know, a partial report within the deadline and supplement later, so at least, you know, you provide some information, you're not totally, late, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. I'll go double check, but, you know, from what I understand, it's 30 days after the fiscal year. It is.
Okay, thank you. All right, skip item number 10, which is board leadership elections. We don't have quorum, so cannot do that voting as well also. Moving to item number 12, creation and abolishment of HART staff positions. And this is going to require a vote as well, right? Okay, on the pleasure of the board, hold it off again, or?
Can I suggest that this be referred to the HR committee for review?
Oh, okay.
I actually would want them to look at some of these issues, especially in light of the risk refresh report that really expressed concerns about some of the management vacancies and the history of our instability in that area. And it looks like we're creating new positions and deleting some of these others.
Chair, can I ask a question? Can you also provide the salaries attached to these positions as well too?
The board that's your creation, abolishment of the new HART staff positions. Could you provide your salaries as well?
Yeah, I think so. But let me just clarify one thing. If you're looking at the sheet there in your books, the RT positions are civil service positions from the pre-HART days that we have essentially never used at HART, and they're not budgeted. This is just a cleanup. So they're not budgeted, not used. The other ones are really just, you see they're pretty even. They're a cleanup of our organization chart. But whenever we delete a title and add a new title, by charter, we have to come to the board.
So Andy, just to clarify then, some of these are just reclassifications of existing positions?
So EFT ones, yeah.
But the RT ones are,
They're still on the books, but we have never used them, and they're not budgeted.
oh, they're not budgeted.
Yeah, these are pre-HART positions.
But they're part of the 125 FTE positions in your budget.
They're not part of the budget. Well,
Hello, Paul Main, Administrative Services Officer. I just ran down. So, the top list of the civil service positions are not in the budget, and they are not in the count.
So they're unfunded and not in your count.
Right, not in the count. We created these early on in the project when we thought we would take over operations and maintenance. So most of them have never been filled, and the ones that were, there's no need for them, even when DTS takes over.
Yes, I wasn't going to speak to this, but I was going to hope that we could have a subsequent opportunity to discuss it. And these positions actually do have meaning for DTS and we're trying to do for O&M. So I'd like to be given an opportunity to talk to staff and also to corporate counsel about them. Because there are policies of the city that when you create a new position, you have to abolish one to keep the count the same. And it would be very beneficial to DTS in our creating new positions to be able to get credit for these.
Or
So-
transfer them to you.
Or transfer them to us.
Well, you wouldn't want to actually transfer these positions because they're irrelevant to the project.
Well, they're irrelevant to the project, but they're very relevant to the city. Yeah, so I'll talk to you about it some more.
Okay, certainly. The reason I put them on the list was because it is preventing us from filling some of our personal service contracts. It was presenting an obstacle, where the city was saying, we can't fill that because you have a position and I'm trying to fill the personal services contract. So, yeah, the sooner we can get together, the better. Okay, we'll start eliminating some of these.
So Chair, so, sorry, so just to clarify, so these RE positions, they're not in the budget as a position count or funding, so eliminating these doesn't create any savings on the part of.
No, unfortunately it doesn't. We didn't budget for these. We only budget for the actual org chart that you look at. Those positions are pretty much all personal service contracts. Those are all budgeted. These are just floating out there. I created some of them even before 2011. And it's pretty easy to create.
So abolishing them, or having them out there is kind of more of an administrative, logistical, mechanical issue that prevents you from contracting as a.
It presented an obstacle, we got over it, but that was the solution, is let's get rid of these positions we're not gonna use. They're on the books, but if we could trade, like I said, that would be fine, we could do that.
Well, with all due respect, Paul, I think that if the city's HR department is telling me you can't do PSCs because we have all these other positions on the books that are, there's something that's there. I mean, there's something, it is not just floating out there. If they're using that as their justification for denying your ability.
They didn't deny, they brought it up, and they did almost stop one of them, but we got through it. And the reasoning is, the charter says, you have to justify there's not an existing position, and at this point in the project, we have a finite life. It wouldn't be a good idea, in my opinion, to fill and create permanent positions, because eventually they're gonna have to go somewhere. But I think we should just work together with ETS and figure out which ones are definitely not needed, or how to transfer at least the count to you guys. Maybe that would be a really good way to approach it.
We'll do that, Paul.
Thank you, Jerry. Just to clarify too, in the PSC positions, you said they're reclassifications. Are there any changes in the salaries when you reclassify them from one to another?
A little bit. Some of them, like for example, we went from 2 computer information technology technicians to 2 computer programmers. That's just what project controls determine they need. They need programmers, not IT technicians. So there's going to be a small increase. We're talking 4 or 5%.
Could you just provide this for informational purposes, whether it's an increase or decrease in the creation of positions?
Sure.
Thank you.
There's also a big decrease, right? Because we eliminated 2 positions.
Right. So that's fine, you can watch all of it together, unless the
Overall,
board members feel otherwise.
It's a net savings.
Okay, thank you.
So we're gonna defer this until the next meeting, so we can get some of those actions and
Okay.
request like that as well.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Item number 13, report of board members' attendance. A is a panel discussion on the public-private partnership. Any of the board members that went to that would like to comment?
I made my comments at the last meeting that we had. I mean, I don't want to say I'm not going to repeat it.
In a minute, okay? B was the move along forward annual meeting. Member Terry?
I found it interesting to hear the discussion from the signatory of the FFGA and his history with the project, and I hope we can use his services one of these days to help us in a consulting way. I mean, I know he's employed now, but soundtrack,
And what was also interesting is he commented on some previous delivery wholeheartedly in support.
And he did say that, did he say 6 months from now? 6 months after the completion of the project, no one will remember all the bad stuff. Well, I'm paraphrasing, but all the rancor, all the fights, they won't even remember how much money we spent after the project. Once it gets rolling and people start using it.
It'll be a while.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. I know the next item is going to go into executive session. Let me take 15, let me skip 14 for now, go to 15 and 16. So report of the board, rules permitted interaction group regarding proposed HART Board internal management policies. Remember? We need to go into executive session.
I don't think so. Okay. Thank you, Chair. First, I want to thank the members of the permitted interaction group on board the rules. That was Wes, Hoyt, the chair, and Glenn. We worked really long, tirelessly and endlessly, looking at documents that were so voluminous that had to be put on flash drives because it was too heavy to carry, as well as brainstorming. Today we present to the board the results of 9 months of work. It may be one of the most important decisions that the board makes as a whole about how we operate and our role in one of the biggest and largest public works projects in the state. And that is how best to implement the charter amendment gives the board the authority to, and I quote, adopt rules and regulations pertaining to the organization and internal management of the authority and allocation of decision-making responsibility as between the board and the administrative staff. We, as a group, synthesized this charter amendment into one word, and that's oversight. And when we looked at the administration's operations, we were overwhelmed by the technical level of detail that the staff has to deal with on a daily basis and by the many moving parts before decisions are made. We were impressed with the difficulty of inserting board oversight into administrative operations and the resulting impact this would have on staff workload and the need for timely decision-making, as well as the expanded time commitment of board members necessary to meet the oversight responsibility. We struggled with coming up with a standard, anything ranging from what's absolutely necessary, what we absolutely need to know, to micromanagement. Our discussion ranged far and wide between minute levels of review, similar to what Board Member Nohara and I did for one of the management consulting firms, where we looked at everything and we looked at charts and we looked at just a level of detail, to something much more broad brush. And we also talked about our recent experiences and frustrations where the board did not have, some of us felt the board did not have a sufficient role in decision making or in something that happened. For example, a couple of years ago where the board did not have input into a response to an audit. Or more recently, the P3, where we've gone through several iterations where we weren't sure if we had jurisdiction or not to make a decision. And as well as when the administration submitted the recovery plan and financial plan, and the board didn't have enough time to really review it and get into it and prove it. So those are some of the things that change orders. We talked a lot about, every meeting we talked about change orders and how best to use our resources with the board to review change orders. So those are some of the frustrations that we looked at in terms of what we should get involved in and what we shouldn't get involved in. In the end, we settled on 2 basic recommendations, and you'll laugh at this because it really is the slogan that has become used, good or bad or indifferent, and that's the on time, on budget, schedule, and the financial plan. And those were, we thought, the most critical 2 areas that the board should be involved in and that oversight responsibility should be exercised. And that was our primary concern. So we looked at that and we said, okay, that should be the standard. That should be the threshold for oversight. And then we looked at the process. How do we do this? Do we do this as a board when we can't have quorum, when we can't act after 11 o'clock, lost quorum? When we can't schedule a meeting because we can't fit enough members and a voluntary board to be able to take action? And we looked at those kinds of activities and tried to find out a way to best perform our oversight responsibilities while still minimizing the time commitment of volunteer members. And then we decided to expand the tasks of the committees, the subject matter committees. And so we delegated because under our own rules and with some revision, a committee which is still subject to sunshine and it's still fully transparent and its meetings are still aired on Honolulu, we can get together a meeting with about 3 people for a quorum and to take action. And we have provisions within our own rules that if the 3 people who are the voting members can't be there, we can appoint on the spot an ad hoc member to be part of that committee so we can act. And so that gave us the ability to be much more flexible in terms of reviewing the nature of the types of activities that come within the broad threshold of schedule and budget. And so we learned a lot because we learned that the tasks of the subcommittees of the board were not defined, and that there had been some documentation in 2015 that described some of these tasks, but it had never been adopted by the board. So what we attempted to do was revisit all those tasks, we refined it, we moved things around, and we expanded it. And pretty much we delegated the role of oversight to our subject matter committees. We also created another committee, and that's called the Executive Committee. And the Executive Committee is composed of members, chair and vice chair of the Project Oversight, Finance Committee, the Governmental Affairs and Audit and Legal Matters Committee, and I'm missing one. No, not HR, not TMD, no, not TMD. No. Anyway, my brain is blanking. Oversight, Finance, jail.
Legal affairs.
Anyway, it's in our materials. And it has provisions that we can step in but it's a committee version of 5 members that includes the board chair. Board chair, vice chair, and 3 chairs of the committee. No, those are the only 3 committees because it's a member of 5. And remember, 3 for a quorum and 3 to act. And for each of the committee chairs that are on there, they can attend and they can substitute with their vice chairs. And so we wanted to limit to 5 so it can be fast acting, because that's what the executive committee was intended to be, a rapid response team. And so, for example, in terms of how it might work, with respect to the audit that Mr. Konda referred to, where he would give the administration 2 weeks, 10 business days, typically that may not fall within a scheduled meeting, then the executive committee, which is a rapid response committee, would be empowered to review the responses and advise the ED, the executive director, on the contents of the audit. And that way, the board can be assured that at least 5 people had an opportunity to look at the response before it went out. And it would not apply, the rapid response team would not apply where there was a legal requirement for board action. So, for example, you could never use a rapid response team in approving the financial plan or the annual budget, because those are legal requirements that the board cannot delegate that responsibility to look at. So we created the executive committee to be the rapid response team. So that was the difference. By revamping the subject matter committees, it meant that the committees would be responsible for considerably more work, because that's the bottom line. Oversight equals more work, more time commitment by all the members who participate in the committees. And we encourage all the committee members to revisit their role and their time commitment in this. And some of the committees will require more work, and that primarily the Project Oversight Committee has the labor and oar with a lot of this stuff. The second committee that would have a lot of responsibilities, the Finance Committee, and the third committee would be the Governmental Matters and Audit and Legal Matters Committee. So I want to go over a couple of things in the packet so that you have it before you and you understand what all those documents mean. There is an errata sheet because there are a couple of errors in there, so I'll just leave that to you. But the first document you have is the report from the Permitted Interaction Group, and it gives all the findings and our recommendations. It's followed by attachment 1, which is a summary of all of the substantive changes that we made. Now keep in mind that although the group was charged with implementing the charter amendment, because we looked at everything, we looked at all the board's past practices, its operations, its rules, we thought it would be helpful to the board that we make any changes along the way to update all of our policies and our rules to keep up with current laws as well as current past practices of the board. And so we made all of those changes along the way as long as we knew about it and were cognizant of it. So our work was further expanded because there's no sense, I mean, the board rules were adopted in 2011 and it's been 7 years and a lot of things have changed since then. So it went from, I think, 11 pages to 19 pages, board rules. But we did try to clean it up as much as we could as well. And so the attachment 1 does include some of those changes that we made in the cleanup. But primarily, it does talk about the oversight policy as well as the delegation to the subject matter committees. There are, that's attachment 1. Appendix 1 to the report is just the charter amendment, so you can look at it. The next document in your packet is the resolution, and it's blank right now, and I'll get a number when we move for adoption of it at the next board meeting or whenever it's appropriate. And this is the resolution that adopts the changes, and I encourage you to look at it. The resolution has the findings as well as identifies all the changes that we're making. It has a reference to Exhibit 1, which is the oversight policy, which I've generally described to you, as well as the subject matter committee. Exhibit B to the resolution is the full set of all the rules and operating procedures of the board, and we're asking the board to adopt it as a whole, as well as repealing the old set and replacing it with new. Exhibit C is, in the packet, is another resolution, one of the charter amendments that we haven't talked about too much, and that is it authorizes the board to develop its policy to approve agreements and arrangements with the federal government as well as with public entities and utilities which have jurisdiction over right-of-way structures, tunnels, essentially the places where we want to build our guideway and our stations, you know, the physical areas that we want to go, and it's public entities and utilities. And we're not sure why the charter amendment was put in there, because you may recall, or maybe not, that under the old charter, the executive director had the responsibility, and still does, for executing all contracts. And that had been interpreted in the past, before the charter amendment, that the board did not have any authority to approve contracts. And we're not talking about procurement contracts, we're talking about all contracts. And so that was one of the big issues that was the subject of a lot of discussion within the board, within the group. And that was which contracts we want to look at, and which ones don't we want to look at. Because the charter amendment gave the board authority in 2 ways only, which assumes that they didn't want us to have authority in the other ways. And so, again, the 2 ways is, one is with the federal government, And 2 is with public entities and utilities that have jurisdiction over the physical area that we want to build our rail system. So this Exhibit C is the policy that we have come up with for implementing that charter amendment. And we pretty much said, and I want to point this out because I think that this policy should be reviewed really carefully. But we decided to recommend that the authority to the executive director remain intact. I mean, meaning he has the approval, he or she would have, in this case he, would have the authority to approve all the contracts, and then we carved out exceptions to that authority. And the first one is any agreement that affects or modifies the full funding grant agreement. And then and the second exception is any agreement which is where the contracts with the public entity or the utilities create a change, a substantial change, again, in schedule and our financial plan. And where we're forced into an agreement with the public entity or utility to either pay more than we wanted to, or to move where we intended to build in order to reach agreement. And so we made those carve-outs that it would come before the board for approval. And we also had a catch-all thing where it would actually extend the schedule, the revenue service date, as well as go over our financial plan if approved. So that's the policy for that. And then the last exhibit to the resolution is Exhibit D, and this is the financial policies of the board. We made a couple of technical revisions to this to update it to include the GET and the TAT surcharge, and some of the Act 1 changes to that. The biggest change in this, there are two major changes in this policy, and you'll be surprised at one of them. And that is in page, it's actually the third page under section 3, a financial plan. It's the last sentence, and it says the plan shall be approved by the board. That sentence did not ever exist in the financial policies of the board. And so we included that in there because I think that's probably one of the most fundamental things that the board is interested in doing. And then the last change is at the end of the document, and that's the new section 7 on contract administration and management that pretty much applies to the change orders over $1 million. Again, that was a practice that had never been codified in board policy or board rule, and we have now codified it, or we're proposing to codify it in the financial policies of the board as well as in the rules. We looked at all the board minutes and referred to the change order to see what it meant. And then we got a legal opinion that said because change orders that apply to contracts awarded under the procurement code, we don't have any authority to approve because the procurement code gives the authority to approve that to the executive director, who is our chief procurement officer. And so we had to write it in a way that still met the legal requirements, and that is we give recommendations to approve or disapprove to the executive director for that. But that still means that the board has a role in approving or disapproving of change orders over $1 million. There are 2 other policies that we also looked at and cleaned up that were outside of the purview of the Prohibited Interaction Group, and that's the ethics policy. We did clean up there. We added sexual harassment training, and we also put in the requirement that seconded management consultants receive training in ethics and sexual harassment. Whatever training all the other employees get, they should be trained as well. And then the transparency policy, we also did clean up because some of the sunshine laws have changed since this policy was adopted in 2011. So that's the work of the PIG. I look forward to having some really good discussions with the board It does mean a fairly major change in the board's role in oversight of the administrative affairs of the organization. And, but I think it's important. When Mr. Kondo read the first part of the findings of the permitted interaction group this morning, it does boil down to the charter amendment gave us this authority because it wanted to assure the public that there was some oversight, there was someone that was paying attention. And I think that these recommendations that were intended to serve that purpose.
Any questions for Amber?
And any members, please share your views as well.
The only, if I may, the only additional point I would make, I think Amber's done a great job of reviewing the board, the vast bulk of the work that we were focused on, administratively and operationally. But if you look at section 2.3 of the new rules board oversight, I did just want to point out, we did talk about, but did not go, discuss at length because I think we decided was unnecessary, is that the board continues, I don't think this is a change so much as just a reiteration of the sense that the board has broad policy or scope, the ability to address any policies that or take on any policies that it feels are appropriate and that are not specifically prohibited from doing. So the point being that it wasn't just about administratively and operationally how we interact and what we do, but we continue to reserve the right to opine, enter into, discuss, and decide any policy issue, anything that we think is within our area of responsibility. To include future plans, for example. And one thing that's concerned me, the route to UH and so on, to be able to advise and, again, provide our views as to what we think should be done as well as just what we are doing within the narrow frame of building the current construction that's going on. And I just wanted to point that out because I think something to bear in mind and not focus solely on how operationally, administratively the changes are.
I'd like to thank the committee members for the work that they've done. It seems like a really detailed and comprehensive review and change, and we really appreciate the effort that it took to get it done.
I echo that as well. I know you guys worked really hard. And I'm glad I wasn't on that page.
Anything else? No, thank you, Amber. I appreciate the real hard work that you guys did put through all of this. So we're going to be looking at this next month. I guess we're going to like I said, best to take a look at it. If you have any additional comments, please let us know. And then at the next month meeting, we maybe move to adopt this if it's appropriate.
Good afternoon. I'm glad that I changed the handy-down. Are you reading off of the report, Honolulu Board for Rapid Transportation Board of Directors report of permitted interaction group on HART Board rules? Okay, I have a question. Apex 1, I'm Barbara Michelle, I'm a commissioner on the rate commission, and I want to know why all this on the back proposed charter amendment 4, Apex 1, has all this stuff underlined on the rate commission. Is this trying to change something regarding the rate commission, or why is this attached to this?
No, it doesn't have anything to do with the rate commission. We just attached appendix 1, which was the charter amendment
This
number
is
4.
the charter.
It is the charter.
You're not proposing to change
Right.
the charter amendment.
Right.
Okay, because that's kind of said, I don't know why you would put it on here as proposed charter amendment underlined when it's already been voted on, and it shouldn't have the underlines under it because it is in effect. I just wanna know if you're changing anything.
We're not doing anything, we photocopied the exact language of the proposed charter amendment number 4. And it's underlined because that's part of the Lands rate.
Well, because the way it was, well, there's an underline once it's been voted in, so
Yeah,
you should
underline
probably
method.
put one in that wasn't underlined because that's what you tried to change. So having this 8 appendix onto your big thing, I don't think you should have this on there, because it looks like anybody else looking at this, that you're trying to change something, and I don't have the original in front of me, and I don't have Wi-Fi to pull it up. I just wanna make sure nothing's changed for the rate commission.
We have done nothing on the rate commission, and part of the reason I attached it is because the underlying portion allows the board to know exactly what the new provisions in the charter amendment 4 were.
Okay, I just wanted to get that clarified on the minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Abby Watson for the record. I am so appreciative that the community interaction group looked at the overall policies, even the stuff that wasn't new. And I'm happy to see the ethics policy, transportation, the transparency policy. I just want to make a comment again. This is something you've heard me say before. The concern that the state auditor mentioned again about employees being interviewed during audits. You know, that is something that really, I think, shouldn't be happening. And when you speak of the tone of the talk, it's you folks who are at the top. You set the tone of what is acceptable and what is not through your policies. So I'm going to try to put together a little bit more detailed information for you folks to consider. I know you're going to decide on this next month, but I think it's really important to have some type of policy in there about overall fraud policy. And I don't want people to panic that I throw that word out there, but I think we really need to consider that it's happening. I mean, it happens in businesses, it happens in nonprofits, it happens in government. We just don't know the amount of it. And so there is a kind of a sample template fraud policy, and I would like the board to consider that, and I will try to get that for you for the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, if not, let's see. So HART's response on state auditor's request. And I know you'd like to say something, but you know, the items on that item number 16 as well, we're going to have to defer because I know we want to go into executive session to talk about this, but we do not have the forum to vote that into executive session. But Andy, do you want to say something now, or are you going to wait?
I would like to say something.
Okay, go ahead.
We heard the state auditor's testimony today, and I want to say that the HART staff fully understands the law, Act 1. We understand that the state auditor and his office has consultant that job to do, and we support that, and we're working very hard to cooperate. I take strong exception to the characterization that we're dragging our feet. I think the issue that when we are struggling a little bit is that people have day jobs. This is a very complex project, over $8 billion. To comply with the voluminous requests of documents, not only from the state auditor, the city auditor, FDA, and others, we're doing the best we can, and it's just really difficult on our staff to snap to it, if you will, and meet every deadline. Having said that, we did receive a letter from the state auditor in early August saying that they have received most, if not all, of the documents they requested. And then by late August, they added several items to the request list, and we we provided all but 8 of the documents requested. I believe right now there's only 6 or 8 documents outstanding as of today, 2 which we cannot locate. They predate HART, so it's very difficult to comply when we cannot locate the documents. So we have maybe 6 or 8 documents that are still outstanding that we're working very hard to provide to the state auditor. It was even conveyed to me by more than one of the people working on his behalf that they understand the position that we're in. Because they sit with us. We see them every day. They're in our office. They understand how busy everybody is. So we have understanding on that from the staff at the state auditor's office. So again, just to reiterate, we're working very hard to comply. We understand that he has a job to do and a limited amount of time to do it at this point. We have had some technical issues. One of the issues that the state auditor conveyed to us is that one of their consultants tried to go into our CMS system, which is our computerized document control system, and was denied entry. And they saw this as us stonewalling them or trying to prevent access. We then asked, well, what did we do? They went to our person who handles the CMS system. The person indicated that they would get on this issue as a technical issue because our own staff has trouble with the CMS. Sometimes we can't access documents as well. So to characterize it as stonewalling is totally not true. It's a technical issue. And our staff member actually printed out the document that the consultant was looking for. So was not impeded at all in that case that was brought to us. And then finally, just on the recording. The state auditor records all the interviews. So we conferred with the council and we were advised it would be prudent to also record to protect our employees. I had more than one employee come to us and say that they were upset that the auditor was recording. I have not had one complaint that we're recorded from any of my employees. What we decided to do is to continue the recording, but we're not transcribing any of the recordings. We have only 2 staff members that have access to the recordings. They put it in a secure file. No manager or me had any access to these recordings. We have no intent to listen to the recording unless when the report comes out and an employee tells us that he's misquoted, he or she were misquoted, that might be the time that we pull out the recording. But up until now, I have no access, no members of my staff have access either to any recording. And I will note that in an editorial by the Star Advertiser, they endorse the idea that we should record and not transcribe, so we thought that was a good suggestion, and we adopted the suggestion from the Star Advertiser's editorial. I'll just make that point as well. So thank you for allowing me to make those comments.
Mr. Chair, if I could just ask one quick question to clarify, because the auditor did make an issue of this last point about recording. As I understand it, on one level it's like, why should both parties be recording this? And why would one set of recordings work? And my understanding is that HART suggested or requested that HART didn't need to do this if the state auditor would share the recordings that he was making. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the state auditor refused to share the recordings that he was making. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Great question. Andy, could you clarify what the state auditor brought up regarding the minutes? He said that the 2014 to 2016. Is that what the issue is? Is that it's pending because of the redacting of those documents?
The Deputy Corporation Counsel Randish provided an attorney-client privilege memorandum and communications to the board members that's not intended for public discussions, an attorney-client privilege document. So those are addressed with regard to the executive session minutes are addressed. And again, the intent was to address the board in executive session. It's just, the board is unable to resolve this executive session due to the lack of voting majority at this point in time.
So we don't have, like I said, I know some of these questions that you might have would be done in executive session. So without having a quorum to be able to vote on some of this, to get into executive session, we're gonna definitely defer it and bring it up at the next board meeting tomorrow as well.
Can I ask a question, follow-up to Wes's question? It is my understanding, Andy, that the period that the auditor is looking at is 2014 to 2016. And so when you said that you couldn't find a document because it predated HART, I was a little bit.
No, we don't even have custody of the board executive session.
No, I'm not talking about executive.
I was referring to a document that has nothing to do with the board. It was a pre-HART, I believe it was an RTD document from a consultant back in the pre-2011 days that they were looking for.
But is it correct that the only period that the auditor is looking at is 2014 to 2016? It's not just limited to executive session minutes?
Oh, you mean for the entire audit?
Right.
No, they're looking at
Everything.
everything. And I should, on that note, in the entrance meeting that we had with the auditor a few months ago, it was explained to us that the audit really deals as a backward-looking audit. And then in a recent meeting, I asked the question, then why are you involved in asking questions about current activities, future activities? They asked if they could sit into our PMOC meetings. That has nothing to do with the past, that's all about the present and the future. Yet we allow them to sit in those meetings, and we made those available to them. And I've been asked, why is the state auditor in this meeting? So I think we're going, pretty far in cooperating, very far.
Thank you. So we'll skip to item number 17, financial update.
So for the August 2017 report, I changed the report a little bit to add a couple more documents based on discussions with the board. With some work, they thought that it would be beneficial to add additional information. So the first page of our standard financial report is going to be like a dashboard. Some of what we think are important information for the board to just look at. I selected these two graphs and a couple of tables because I thought that would be enough information as a snapshot. But if you think that more information is necessary on the dashboard, please let me know, and I could certainly add it onto the dashboard. So on the dashboard, we try to present revenue information and total expenditure information and by category. On the right is a graph of the type of revenue and the trend of this revenue. And on the bottom is the relationship between revenue and expenditures. I know we get a lot of questions to, well, we're collecting so much money, why do we need to borrow? So this kind of tells you the relationship between the total expenditures we incur and the total revenues that we collect, and the gap is what we need to. It's a cash flow gap that we need to address on an annual basis by borrowing money. Eventually, it will be paid back, but in the next few years, we're going to have a gap between revenue and expenditures. So the next page has to do with not only just information about this fiscal year, but a look forward on the first 3 months of the following fiscal year. Just so that we can convey the message that even though we need to borrow money this year, we also need to borrow money the year after. And to show some projected expenditures for 18-month period. Exhibit C, which is the last 3 pages, that's our standard cash flow. That just shows the revenue collected, the actual revenues collected and the actual expenditures paid up to August 2000, for July and August 2018, and the projections for the rest of the fiscal year. And I'll take any questions before that.
So Robert,
Yes.
so we talk about the total project cost being 8.165 billion, the total budget,
Correct.
but when you add in the financing cost, the actual total project cost is another 848 million?
That's correct. The total project cost, including financing, it's just over $9 billion. The 8.165 plus
The
848 million in financing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really looking at 9 billion, not really 8.1.
Oh, just over 9 billion, yeah. So, and, like what we the board and Executive Director Robbins talked about earlier, we're gonna review our recovery plan, and the 8.165 would need to reflect the additional 134 million in costs that the FDA projects.
Has there been any updates in terms of the process of getting monies approved by DEX and paid by budget and finance? From the GET and the TEPs?
You mean, you mean just for this quarter?
That's right.
And no, haven't had a chance to talk about that. We would expect, generally, it'll probably transfer to the city toward the end of October, maybe the 3rd week of October, after the quarter ends this week.
Have you done any other revenue projections beyond 2019?
Yeah, we have. We do. We have revenue projections for GET and TAP all the way through to 2030. And that will also be reflected in our revised financial plan when we submit that to the FDA. Well, our plan is to submit it to the board initially, then I think there's a plan to submit it to the city council for their approval before we submit it to the FDA. That's the plan, the timing.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question for you. So how are you gonna show the 44 million on these sheets?
44 million on, you mean with our revised?
Well, given that the FDA wants to see that specifically in the financial plan, I would think that since what I'm understanding is that if the council acts, that the bonds would have to be issued and actual money transferred into the HART account. So would then you want to show that on your cash flow? You have the 400 million, but that's all money that you would be repaying out of GET and TAT.
Yeah,
The
well,
44 million would not be.
Okay, I understand the question. So the cash flow is not what we're going to submit to the FDA. What we submit to the FDA is the financial plan for the entire project from the beginning all the way to 2030. So the 44 million will be presented as part of the financial plan in fiscal year 2019.
Would you ultimately also show it on these sheets?
As soon as we receive the money, then we would put it in our monthly financial update. Correct.
To make the FDA happy, though, don't you think you should be showing it in the next version of this?
Well, this is,
I know you need the city council action first, but hopefully they'll occur within 60 days.
Yeah.
And then you would put it in here?
yeah, I think I'll show it when the item actually gets on the council committee agenda.
So that 44 million would actually show up under the city subsidy dash HART administration line.
Correct, yes.
Is there any, actually, is there any restriction on the use of the funds, if it's gonna be out of bond money?
The 44 million?
Yeah.
The 44 million is, part of the money in the September 2007 financial plan that we submitted, to pay for administrative costs.
Understand that, and bond council is authorized that it can be used for that purpose?
Well, the city administrative costs from our standpoint is all capital in nature, right? So even from an FTA standpoint, what we consider as expenditures in our operating budget are also reimbursable by FTA grants. Now, if your question is, have we got an opinion from core council whether the 44 million could be used for what HART is now considered operating expenses, or for what Act 1 is considered administrative costs? I do not have an opinion from core council, but if you look at the budget ordinance that's passed, it's in the capital appropriation budget on our side. So what we would do is to use the 44 million to pay for our capital costs. For the city's administrative costs, our plan has been since September of 2017 is to use the July and August 2017 GET that we collected, and we are considered the GET collected for those 2 months pre-Act 1 collection. And our position is it's not subject to the Act 1 restrictions on paying for administrative and marketing and whatever cost there is in Act 1.
But the HART administrative operating budget is around 24, 25, 26 million, right?
That's correct.
So 44 is going to be higher than that.
That's correct. The 44 was the number that we submitted in the September 2007 financial plan. Now, that being said, what we undertook in February, March of this year, is to reevaluate our what we consider operating expenditures, or expenditures in our operating budget, and look at it from a financial reporting standpoint. What amount of that should be considered capital costs from a financial standpoint? And what we came up with, and I think we brought it up to the board, is that of our operating budget, of the monies in our operating budget, 70% of that we would consider that to be capital in nature, whereas 30% would be pure administrative costs that has no direct or indirect, is not directly or indirectly related to the managing and the running of the project. Now, that's what we came up with. Our external auditor is going through our plan, our allocation, and they're doing testing on it. And I think, in the next month or two, when they finish, when our external auditors complete the audit, we'll get an indication whether they agree with our 70 and 30 allocation, or whether they come up with something that's a little different. So from that standpoint, the annual city administrative contribution or subsidy will be much lower. But that doesn't mean that, the city is not obligated to fund a certain amount for the entire project as a whole.
Robert?
Yes.
So, I just want to clarify. Act 1 said that the monies received from GET and TAT cannot be used for administrative purposes, right? Only for building the rail system, right?
Yeah,
Construction costs.
Right, administrative, marketing, maintenance, including personnel costs.
Right.
That's what that was.
And so the 44 million coming from the city is intended to pay for those expenses?
Yeah, back when we drafted the financial plan in September 2017, you know, we had a 2-week period to draft the financial plan and submit it to the FDA. So we didn't have enough time to evaluate whether the entire operating budget should be considered administrative in nature as defined under Act 1. So after we submitted, so what we did was, if you look at the financial plan that we submitted in September, the fiscal year 18, fiscal year 2019, and 2021, for that matter, is our operating budget funding. So fiscal year 2018, the $20 million is our operating budget funding minus July and August. And fiscal year 2019, the $24 million is what we receive, or what we consider as operating budget that the board approved. So that was before we look at, well, from that amount, what could we consider as capital of that $24 million? So based on our analysis, looking at all the things that those employees do that are part of that $24 million budget, we came up with 70% of what of the employee salaries, benefits, and including expenditures.
So 70% of 20 million?
70% of 24.
Of 24.
For fiscal year 2019.
Because, you know, typically, when you issue bonds, you don't use bond proceeds for operating.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And so, you know, Calvin knows this, he's finance director, Paul West knows this.
Yes.
And so that's the tricky part. So if we're talking about getting bond monies, basically from the city, you know, as per the council's authorization of using monies from the city for rail, it's confusing to me to understand how we're saying that on one hand, Act 1 says we can't use TAT and GET money for administrative purposes, and then there's a gap in the, you know, in the budget, and the gap is to be fulfilled by the city, but the city's using bond proceeds to fill that gap. Something doesn't make sense to me.
I think the logic is that before Act 1, all of HART's O&M were considered to be part of the capital project under the federal definitions.
Okay.
And so the grant of $1.55 billion is a capital project grant. You can't use that to operate a public transportation system. It's to build something. So up until Act 1, Robert, I think correctly, and the organization correctly, was just viewing all their activity as capital. And so I'm thinking that what Robert's hoping is that the Corps and bond people will still consider the federal definition on capital to govern versus the state definition. Do I have that right, Robert?
Yeah, so just to follow up on what Director Fonseca says. So let's just take the fiscal year 2019 budget for example, of the $24 million. 70% of that $24 million, we're looking at it as capital costs. So from our standpoint, we could use bond proceeds to pay 70% of the $24 million. The 30% of the $24 million, $7 million. We're using Act One money to cover that portion, which is July and August of 2017 GDP collections, to cover that 30%.
And is that gonna carry you through for the duration of the project? I mean, the way that you're managing that, those allotments?
No, it's not. At a 30% rate, I'm
Yeah.
estimating it may be 3.5 years before the city will actually have to contribute non-bond money
Okay.
into to pay for it.
Okay, that's where I was going with this.
Yes.
Because at some point, it seems that you would have to use non-bond proceed funds, property taxes or whatever the source.
Oh,
to be
yeah,
able to
yeah,
pay
yeah.
for administrative costs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Right now, we have about, I would say about 20 million of pre-Act One GDP money available. So, let's just assume it's 30% of 24, and all things being equal for the next 3 years, you have 21 million of administrative costs that could be covered under pre-Act One money. So, that 7 million a year will be exhausted in 3 years, or somewhere around that time.
Thanks.
But Robert, isn't it also accurate that the FTA expectation for the city to contribute 44 million?
Mm-hmm.
It's the city's decision to utilize bond funds to make that contribution, right?
Correct. The FTA does not tell you how you want to fund it.
So does HART care what was the original source of the funds for the 44 million? When you get the check for 44 million, let's say, do you care that it was bond borrowed funds or if it was city cash funds? Would that matter to HART?
No, it's true.
Would not matter?
No, not at all, because,
So maybe there's a question, not for you, but I'll just kind of like throw it out there on the table. Toby's original point about, I think the limitation on using bond funds for the city and the state on operating, I think that is not a determination to be made from the feds.
No.
And, well, I think it's a under state statute limitation on the city as well as the state. So maybe the question that I'll throw out there is maybe it would be reliant upon the bond council for the city to make that determination whether it is okay for the city to know how HART intends to use the proceeds, which apparently looks like it would be city bond proceeds.
Yes, it will be. And the question was asked earlier whether we check with bond council or not, and the question is no, because I think for the $44 million issuance, it's really away from HART. It's really the city issuing.
I think it's a question for the city rather than a question for HART.
Right, because as far as HART is concerned, and probably even FTA, as long as 44 million goes into our bank account, the FTA really doesn't care where it comes.
At 44, I'm sorry.
We're gonna be in discussion. Who chairs it?
44 million is the amount that the FTA is expecting because that's what we put in our financial plan and our recovery plan, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the council resolution or their authorizing document calls for 44 billion to come from bond proceeds, and it's put into our capital budget, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but there is no provision anywhere for the financing costs. Is that right? Because doesn't the city, if they have to float the bond, doesn't the city have to pay for the cost?
Yeah, there's no provision in the HART budget
Right.
for anything other than accepting the $44 million.
Is it in the city's budget though?
You would expect.
But it
There's
has,
no obligation on.
yeah, but it hasn't been authorized. It's not part of the city's budget.
No,
It
but
hasn't
that's
been
what the
authorized.
process is that they're going through.
They have to open up their budget then. Do you know how hard that is?
I think that's, you would know better than.
So perhaps that reinforces the mayor's concerns and comments about the timeliness of 60 days to get this accomplished.
And I can tell you, discussions about the 44 million as part of the 214 million. All discussions I've heard are about that 214 being a bond finding, it's not being out of the operating budget. So I think we need, the good thing is we have a couple of years to worry about this.
Worry about what?
So the city has 60 days to worry about.
About your 30% problem. You say you have enough money to last you for a couple of years, then you start talking about the city paying more money, but the limit on the city's money is the 214 million, and the 214 million was always anticipated to be coming out of bonds. So yeah, we have to work this split through.
Better talk to bond council.
Well, at this level of detail, I don't think has come up very recently, and it hasn't really been a problem. It's still a problem 3 years out.
Well, I know the city has a debt service budget. You know, I don't know how much debt it covers.
Well, it covers what the authority for its bonding capacity is for the fiscal year.
Yeah.
Since this wasn't part of its bonding capacity for the fiscal year, I would assume it wouldn't cover that.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be a city county.
Unless they have to defer other projects still too.
Any other questions? Robert, great work on these spreadsheets, but
Thanks.
Board-wise, anybody else? If not, Barbara.
Thank you.
Afternoon again, Barbara Michaud, I'm a commissioner on the rate commission, but I'm speaking as an individual. I don't agree with this. I don't think we should worry about it later. I think everything should be worried about now. I have a question regarding Exhibit C, MI 940, emergency backup generator. I had asked this question in the rate commission meeting. The DTS said, okay, it's going to be functional by December 2020. The budget for 2018, I think will be in June, had zero across the line for emergency generators. So with all these hurricanes and with maybe blackouts, whatever, why aren't you paying to get these emergency generators up and running and ready way before 2020? Because you're going to be testing them. How long does it take to get the emergency generators? Does it take 12 months? Does it take 24 months? They've got it listed down here. February 2019 projected $14,825, and it goes straight over to the line. But at the end, estimate of completion in millions, it had zero. When you total up what was on that line, why is there two zeros? Why is there a zero at the end? And how long does it take, maybe somebody can answer me, to get an emergency generator and the kind that you need to run the rail if there's no electricity? So I just have that question, and I'm just curious.
Thank you.
And why it's zero on the end, I'd like to know that. But it's good to see that they're putting some money in an emergency generator, because I'd hate to see it stopped up there and have the fire department come to get people off the train.
And do you get any idea of that as far as if we're purchasing or we're going to be renting or?
The plan is to include the emergency generators in the system that in the event of a complete power failure, we'll be able to get the train back to the stations.
Right, and so it's not at every location, right? It's going to be made so that you could wheel one in and hook it up.
Well, no, I think there'll be four or six, I can't remember the exact number, that are needed to accomplish that.
Okay,
Thank you, Natalie Ross, for the record. I really appreciate Robert's work on all this, especially when I think this gets really the answer. I just wanted to remind everybody that you were told that city money would not be used to fund rail construction, and you had almost every other, promise about the rail broken, and this is probably the last one. I would like to ask the board to make sure that the financial plan is approved before it goes to the CTA and before it goes to the council. Even the recovery plan is approved by city council before you guys approve it. 3.5 years before we need to look at funding with city basically real property taxes. And so I don't know how much you've listened or seen what the council chair has said, but they're thinking about putting restrictions on that 44 million, and this will all be very interesting, I think, coming in the next month or so. The last thing I wanted to ask about is the financing costs not being part of the HART budget. I think that was a really good question. The issuance costs are in the budget, or at least in that cash flow projection, and then interest is budgeted out. So I'm now a little confused on Robert's response to that question, and the possibility that the city is going to have to fund that. I don't know if that means that we're looking at just the next few years and then it'll be paid down the road or what, but I guess this will come out in the council meetings. I'm a little confused on that part of it, so, yeah, wait.
Okay. Item number 18, construction traffic update, French.
Frank Gossett, Design and Construction Director for HART, providing your construction update. So update on the Guyways contracts. We've had several discussions with Kiewit, and there's a number of minor punch list items remaining associated with license plate years that we think will have. We have them in hand and they're being programmed, and I should not be able to report that to you. And we're moving towards the final, or I should say, conclusion of our discussions with Kiewit with respect to the settlement, and I promised the director that we're targeting coming to you with agreement on that specific aspect.
Can I interrupt? With a question on that. With respect to your statement, because I don't know the answer to this. Usually I know the answer when I ask a question. This one I don't. When you're closing out the Kiewit contract, does that mean you close it, you'll have to resolve all the issues in dispute? Can you close it out, or can you still claims outstanding?
No, the intent is to close it and resolve all outstanding claims and issues. There may be there are a few things that may still have to be, we agree on, and you'll have to progress the process. But the intent with respect to the settlement or the agreement to close out